You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley and Jake Mastroianni with you after what was a disappointing night of baseball for the Braves. They had the early lead. They got the strong start they needed, but they could not find the hits that they needed with runners on base to avoid a 3-2 loss to the Philadelphia Phillies, which evened up this three-game series at a game apiece through the first two and put some pressure on Atlanta. If they want to take the series, they're going to have to get the job done on Thursday behind the rookie Spencer Schwellenbach. All of those things we're going to be talking about on this edition of the Braves POSTCAST. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube and Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to the Prize Picks, or go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Well, Jake, this was not one of those nights where everything was going wrong for the Braves. In fact, a lot of things were kind of going right early on, but then it kind of felt like a familiar tale of opportunity after opportunity, but the big hits a little bit harder to find.
Yeah, this is the offense that we've, unfortunately had to deal with for most of this season. I mean, plenty of base runners in this game. You had 9 hits, you had 3 walks, but your only runs come on the only extra base hit of the night, which was a home run. And it's the inability of this team, or maybe the unwillingness of this team, to try to manufacture runs and score in different ways. Look, this is not the 2023 offense. You're going to have to find other ways to get it done rather than waiting on that home run ball.
Yeah, I mean, the home run has still been a part of the Braves offense this year, but even those have not been coming as often as they've needed to with a bunch of runners on base. At least it hasn't felt like that, especially over the last month plus. But the early lead the Braves got did come courtesy of Orlando Arcia's 12th home run of the year, a 2-run shot off Aaron Nola. You kind of felt like, all right, well, maybe that's going to be the spark that lights this Braves offense, ignites things, if you will, because they were able to grab that 2-0 lead. But in stark contrast to what we've seen, the Braves have a lot of trouble doing. The Phillies were able to chip away at it, score a couple of times against Fried by, you guessed it, manufacturing some runs, and then able to manufacture a run against Joe Jimenez in the 8th inning to go ahead 3-2, which would be the final score of this game. Max Fried, though, before we get lost in what the offense didn't do, let's talk about what he was able to do. 4th start since coming off the injured list. It was a return to form against the Phillies, no question about it. Really in command, 7 strong innings for him. You'll take this performance from Fried. Obviously, we can talk about the offense and what it did not do, but Jake, this is a start I think everybody was looking for out of Max Fried, and he did deliver.
Yeah, and coming back out for that 7th inning after giving up those 2 runs in the 6th, obviously very key for Max Fried to be able to get deep into the game and give the team a chance to win. Look, these are the types of games I think the Braves are going to get in, kind of get back to our conversation a minute ago. I believe the pitching is going to give them a chance to win, and nobody was really concerned about Max Fried. He's going to get back on track at some point, and this certainly was a step in the right direction. A lot of ground balls in this one, did give up a lot of hard contact, 11 hard hit balls against them. Not used to seeing that, but again, a lot of that on the ground. We are used to seeing that with Max Fried. So certainly looked more like the Max Fried that we're used to. And so hopefully now he's kind of got that out of the way, getting back on track, and we see more starts like this from Max Fried the rest of the season.
Yeah, and we know how important he is to what the Braves want to do, as we've talked about at least a couple of times in the last 2 weeks. I mean, Atlanta wants to kind of shift away from trying to mix in other starters and give guys extra rest and go with a true starting 5. And they believe that they have the horses that can get it done. I mean, obviously, Chris Sale's work speaks for itself. Reynaldo Lopez showed that he's back in a big way in game 1 of this series. But I think the trifecta that you need to have at the top of that rotation, the other pitcher in question was Max Fried. Could he get back on the beam, so to speak, after 3 starts that had, poor to middling results? It seemed like it kind of evolved a little bit on him, but it was great to see the control was much more so where it needed to be in this outing against the Phillies. In fact, the 1 walk that he did have, I would argue wasn't much of a walk at all, but that's a different story for maybe later in the show. As far as what the Phillies were able to do, they did manufacture those 3 runs. 2 of them came against Fried, as Jake mentioned, in the 6th inning, and then 1 more came in the 8th off Joe Jimenez. And on the flip side of this, while the Phillies were doing that, Braves were 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. They left 9 men on base, and that included really what it felt like kind of a golden opportunity against Carlos Estevez in the 9th inning to maybe make things pretty interesting, give them a finish, as they say. but just unable to find that big hit there, even with the runners on base. And, the closer of the Phillies on the ropes.
Yeah, that looked like a great opportunity there, maybe for the Braves to at least tie it up or, have some magic and come back and win it. The bottom of the lineup did exactly what you want them to do. They got on base and you get it back to the top, but it's hard not to sit here. I know Witt's had a really good series already against his old team, but it's hard not to sit here and say, man, I wish that would have been Austin Riley up at the plate in that situation in the ninth inning. But it's just the state of where the lineup is right now. But either way, I mean, you had some good at-bats. Arcia with a good at-bat to get a leadoff walk there to get that rally going. It's just, rough night for Michael Harris, he's been great since coming back, but he's the only guy in the lineup, started in the lineup, that didn't reach base tonight with an 0 for 5. So just a rough night for him. Overall, thought he was going to beat that ball out and load the bases there for Witt. But just weren't able to get that big hit. And kind of that inning in the 6th inning as well. You had a leadoff single and that one unable to manufacture. They had some chances. Again, it's just kind of been the case all year long. They've had chances, just aren't able to come up with those big hits in clutch situations. I talked about on the podcast the other day, they're bottom 5 in all of baseball and what Fangraphs categorizes as clutch or high leverage situations. They just have not been able to come through this season like they have in the past.
No, and that's why you end up being a bottom 5 offense really since the start of May. I know coming into the month of August, you went back and looked, the only teams that had a worse run of offense since May the 1st were the Miami Marlins and Chicago White Sox. And I don't know if I need to tell you, but I will anyway. Jake, that's not the company the Braves offense needs to keep, and not the company that anybody thought coming into the year that the Braves offense would be keeping.
No, you figured they'd be at the top. And what the crazy thing is, in the second half, they're leading. I believe last I looked, they were leading the league in home runs in the second half, but still just kind of middle of the pack in terms of runs scored. And a lot of that just their inability to get on base and just not having any runners on when those home runs are coming. And then, as we talked about at the top, just the inability really to manufacture in other ways. The speed element that's not part of this game right now, obviously with Acuna and Albies out and Michael Harris just coming back, you don't have many other ways to score runs. You're hoping to string together 3-4 hits in an inning with maybe a walk in there to really put up a crooked number. And they just don't have that ability right now in this lineup on a nightly basis. And especially when you're facing really good pitching like the Braves have been facing in this series.
No, and you knew you were going to when you saw Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola coming in. They're going to see Christopher Sanchez in the finale. So, I mean, there's a reason why the Phillies have the record they do and have the lead that they do on the NL East, which obviously after this win, they take right back the game that the Braves took in the first one as far as the standings are concerned and are now back up by 7 in this division. We'll talk more about that and, of course, where the wild card is and where the Braves fit into that picture as well as we move on. But one other thing we saw in the 9th inning was Jorge Soler back to the plate as a pinch hitter. That, of course, is good to see. Still not back in the lineup, though, but lasted just one pitch, and it seemed like, Jake, it was just one of those that he'd like to have another opportunity at because it looked like, with Soler's power, if he had been able to really get that ball and not get under the ball the way he did, that might have been the pitch that was going to be pretty costly for Estevez there.
I was feeling in that situation, Grant. I'm not going to lie. I felt like that was going to be kind of the moment for Soler coming back to Atlanta this year. I thought he was going to get a big hit there and just missed it, as you said. I mean, you don't really expect to get that first pitch coming off the bench to get a fastball right down the middle, but he did just miss it. But yeah, I had a lot of confidence. Love the call. Obviously, putting him there in that situation with his big bat, you're just one swing away from taking the game right there, putting him in. But just missed it. I really thought that was going to be the moment for Soler.
Yeah, and then right after that, from thinking about the power potential of Jorge Soler to the little nubber off the end of the bat by Harris the other way, nice play by Alec Boehm, who was able to come in and quickly transfer, get that throw over to first base, and get the second out. It moved the runners to second and third. Then Whit Merrifield, of course, grounded out and stranded the tying and potential winning run out there for the Braves. It was just that kind of night, though, for them, as again, 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position, just not able to get that hit when they needed to. We got a lot more to get to on this edition of the Braves Postcast. We'll break down the start for Max Fried as we move forward. We'll also talk a little bit more about what's going on with the Braves offense, maybe what's not going on with the Braves offense, and, of course, size up Game 3 of this series. That is all coming your way as the Braves Postcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula, the winning formula for winning championships, and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only in the U.S. Let's take a look at the box score and the line score of this game for the Braves, who came up on the wrong side of a 3-2 final. Phillies improved to 74-52. They had 3 runs on 5 hits, no errors for Philadelphia, just one man left on base. Very limited opportunities for the Phillies, but they made the most of them for sure in manufacturing those 3 runs. Braves with 2 runs, 9 hits, no errors, and again, 9 men left on base for them. Winning pitcher is Strom. He picks up the victory in relief, moves to 5-2. Joe Jimenez is charged with a loss. He drops to 1-5 on the year, as he was on the mound in the 8th when the Phillies took the lead. And the save did go to Estevez, his 22nd overall, I believe his second with the Phillies since coming over from the Angels. Let's start with Max Fried, though, in this one. The dynamic performance from him. 7 innings, 2 runs, both of them earned, 4 hits, 1 walk, though again, that was just one of the many questionable calls behind home plate for Corey Blazer. That wasn't a huge reason why the Braves lost. Don't get it twisted, but it was not the most fun to watch some of the calls going both for and against individual hitters or pitchers in certain situations. And it does, have a cumulative effect of changing the approach of hitters, certainly in an at-bat. When you're expecting it to be 2-0, 3-0, all of a sudden it's 1-1, 2-1. It just changes the way that things are sequenced, obviously, but we'll put that aside for now. 4 strikeouts for Fried, so not a lot of swing and miss, Jake. You mentioned that he gave up some hard hit contact in this one, but when you do keep the ball on the ground the way that he was able to, you can let your defense do the work. And among the guys that were flashing the leather behind him in this one, how about Gio Urshela? I thought that was a tremendous game at third base for him.
Yeah, certainly great. And that was the one thing you said about Gio when you brought him over, a guy that can really handle third base over there, and had a hit in this one as well in that 9th inning to kind of keep that rally going. Had a couple hits in this one, I believe. So, yeah, good game from him coming over. Again, we'll see how that plays out, but I thought it was the right move, as we talked about the other day. But yeah, getting back to Max Fried, kind of unusual. You look at his stat. He's usually somebody that doesn't give up a lot of hard contact, but it's a 93.4 mile per hour average exit velocity against him in this one. But again, a lot of that on the ground, not a lot of swing and miss either, just 7 whiffs on 45 swings. So Phillies were certainly on him, but again, a lot of that on the ground, 11 ground outs in this one. So his ability, as he typically does, just to get that contact, those ground balls, and that defense behind him, as you mentioned, with Gio Urshela at the top of it. So certainly much better outing for him, able to throw that fastball sinker. Didn't throw as many curveballs in this one, just 18. But, again, just getting that contact, getting it on the ground, and being able to go deep in the game. I thought that was key for this one. Only had the 4 strikeouts, but he was able to keep that pitch count in a good spot that allowed him to go deep into this one. And I think Max will probably tell you that's probably more important to him than anything, being able to go deep in the game, give his team those innings, and obviously putting up some zeros, which he did a great job of in this one.
Yeah, and you knew he had to be frustrated with the walks and the fact that he was kind of compounding his own problem over at least the first 2 especially, and to a lesser extent in the one against San Francisco. But either way, to have the the 1 walk to JT Realmuto, which was just a bad call on the final pitch of that sequence. But either way, he was much more dialed in here. And I think that's one of the things that you needed to see, was just that he was able to command and utilize all of his pitches in whatever percentages that he needed to, but he was able to stay in and around the strike zone. And I think he did a much better job of that, to your point, in this start as well. Now, as far as the other things that went on for the Braves in this one offensively, what did not go on, as it happens, is that, you only got the 2 runs on the home run that came in the 4th inning, courtesy of Orlando Arcia. That's always, I think, not always, but for a little while, that's going to be a story when Arcia is playing against the Phillies. And I think he added a little bit more to it by maybe trying to make a little bit of eye contact, have a little stare down with Bryce Harper on his way around the bases. I'm all for this stuff. I didn't have a problem with it in the postseason. I didn't have a problem with Harper doing it either. It's just kind of part of this rivalry, and heck, why not? I don't care what time of the year it is, what month on the calendar it is either. This is just kind of the way that these two teams are, and divisional rivals should be, kind of poking and prodding at each other in different ways. I thought that was kind of one of the fun highlights and things that went on in this game.
Yeah, look, the Braves lost this game, but I saw a lot of fight and a lot of fire from this team in this one that we haven't seen a lot of this year, and I think that's good. And I'm with you. I think the Arcia thing, I wish, and Mark Bowman, I think, said this on social media too. I wish they would have handled it different in the postseason instead of, oh, I wish they didn't hear that, weren't supposed to hear that, and all of that, and kind of playing scared when it happened, and just, own up to it and own up to the rivalry and what it is. But it seemed like, at least at that time in the postseason, kind of let it get into his head a little bit. But yeah, it's all fun. This game is hard. Anytime you do things well, especially as a hitter, where it's really hard in baseball, you want to celebrate that and be, excited about it. So yeah, I think it's good for the rivalry. I'm fine with it, but certainly you want to do that. You want to come out with the win at the end.
Well, of course, but I mean, you do what you can, I guess, in the moment there. And as far as that postseason thing went, I didn't think it was that big of a deal when it happened, but it turned into kind of a big deal. And I can understand, I guess, different nuances about maybe the way that it was presented. I don't think anybody was sorry about saying it. I certainly wouldn't be, but as it is, that is, water under the bridge as far as this rivalry is concerned. You got to load up and do it again. And the Braves are going to try to take a series from the Phillies. If not, make it a little bit interesting, at least down the stretch, apply a little bit of pressure and see what they're able to do with these head-to-head meetings, of which they still have 5 more of those. Aaron Nola, meanwhile, was fine in this game. He did give up the 2-run homer, but the Braves could not get the big hits against him when they had opportunities outside of that. And the Philadelphia bullpen, I think you got to give a lot of respect to those guys, as they came in and allowed exactly 1 hit and 1 walk, and those did not happen until the 9th inning.
Yeah, great job by this Phillies bullpen, obviously, and Jeff Hoffman in particular. I mentioned that 6th inning, coming in with a couple on base and getting a big double play to get out of that jam. That was a big spot. And Kirk Ring, who was pitching on back-to-back nights, came out and had a good one as well. And then Estevez, he had a shot at him there in that 9th inning, as we've alluded to several times, though, just not able to get that final blow, to get that big hit against him. A guy they got at the deadline is now their closer, obviously, with the struggles of Alvarado, who we saw the night before walking everybody. So, yeah, I thought the Phillies, bullpen did a good job coming in and kind of keeping the Braves offense at bay.
Yeah, with that win, the Phillies once again moved to 7 games up against Atlanta. They've had a pretty comfortable lead in this division for quite a while, despite the fact that, yeah, the Braves have been struggling for a while. I mean, at least since May the 1st, we've talked a lot about that. Phillies have had a pretty forgettable second half, and they've also won just 3 of the 8 meetings head-to-head against the Braves so far. So there has been at least a little bit of fight between these two teams as far as that's concerned. Meanwhile, while the Phillies bullpen was able to do what it needed to, unfortunately for Joe Jimenez, he was not able to get it done. Couldn't get some swing and miss, I feel like, was the big problem when he needed it, Jake, as the Phillies were able to get a fly ball, well, a leadoff double, then a fly ball to move a runner to third, and a sac fly to bring that runner in. And that was all they needed to win the game, as it turned out, because those hits and the ability to manufacture runs was not working the same way for the Braves.
Look, this game's on the offense. I think we've talked about that a lot, but certainly wasn't a great outing for Joe Jimenez. You got an 0-2 pitch against a 7-hole hitter. You cannot leave that fastball right down the middle. So that was a huge mistake pitch that he didn't get away with. You got the leadoff double, and then Stoughton, who's a really good with the bat, puts the ball in play to move the runner over. Then Marsh almost got him to swing on that pitch, had the check swing there, but didn't go, and then gets the sac fly to drive him in. He gave up 3 hard hit balls on the inning, those 3 that we just mentioned, and he's working on back-to-back nights. But look, this is the time of year you're going to have to do that. So you certainly want to see him step up in those spots, but just didn't have it tonight. But I mean, ultimately, this game, in my mind, comes down to the offense and just their inability to be able to score runs in different ways.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, everybody in the Braves lineup left at least 1 runner on base. Again, if you're 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position as well, that's going to be one of those things. 3 men left on base for Harris, for Merrifield, and for Sean Murphy in this game. As far as the 2-hit games and this one of the multi-hit games, 1 for Jared Kelnick, that's good to see. I feel like he's had some really good swings lately. It seems like he's kind of hitting his way out of that funk that he was really in the month of July, and he was down pretty bad, it felt like, for about 4 solid weeks there after having a really good run at the top of the order for the Braves. And, of course, we mentioned Gio Urshela also had a couple of hits for Atlanta in this one. And, he has an opportunity to do some big things, it looks like, in the field. And whatever they can get out of him at the plate, the Braves will certainly take as well.
Certainly will, especially, both of those guys kind of batting down in the order. Love to see them, getting some hits, maybe Kelenic taking some of that pressure off of him now as he's batting further down in the lineup and not having to play center field. I mean, that is very stressful. I remember Adam Duvall had to play center field a couple of years ago, and it was really affecting his bat. You moved him to a corner, and he kind of took off. So maybe that kind of helps settle Kelenic down a little bit, but good to see some good swings out of him because you really want him in there. Obviously, that left-handed bat, you're going to face more righties than lefties, so you're going to see him get those opportunities and want to see him take advantage of it. And Urshela trying to take advantage of this time that he has as well to take over this job for hopefully the rest of the season if he can get going and prove that, he can do some good things defensively and at the bottom of that order.
Yeah, it certainly would go a long way for the Braves. So again, we went over the internal options when Austin Riley went on the injured list, and those were not really the answers the Braves were looking for, and some fortunate timing allowed them to bring over a veteran to put at the hot corner for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, before you even really are going to have a timetable of what it's going to look like for Austin Riley to get back to this club potentially. But that seems like it's going to come down to the wire as far as the regular season is concerned. And again, who knows? When Austin Riley talked to the press yesterday, he said, basically, I got to concentrate on doing what I can day to day, and just got to hurry up and wait. As far as the healing's concerned, there's not a whole lot he can do to push that or make it happen any faster. Be that as it may, the Braves coming up short 3-2, the final score against the Phillies in Game 2 of this series. When we come back, we will turn our attention to Game 3. The Braves will try to take this series from Philadelphia. They'll need another great start, another great performance from the rookie Spencer Schwellenbach. We'll get you set up for the finale of the series as the Braves postcast continues. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's Locked On MLB on the Prize Picks app for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy with Prize Picks. Well, Jake, let's talk a little bit about what is ahead for the Braves here as they have 5 more games against the Phillies head-to-head if they want to make this division race interesting. It is a tall order. As we know, every time that one of these clubs wins and the other by de facto or by default will lose, it's a full game in the standings. So what the Braves were able to do in the opener, the Phillies just took right back in the second game, but still a chance to at least not allow the Phillies to put too much more space between these two clubs with just under 6 weeks to go in the season. It'll be interesting to see how these clubs play down the stretch. The Braves haven't really been able to get on a run. Neither have the Phillies, but Philadelphia obviously did some pretty serious work in the first half to build up their lead in this division.
Yeah, big hole for the Braves to try to dig themselves out of. And as I said, coming into this series, look, I would love to win these games and make things close to the division again. But for me, the Braves just need to win series. I don't care, who it's against. Obviously, you want to do it against your rival. That feels just a little bit better. But I just need to see this Braves team winning series the rest of the way and to get on that roll that we've been waiting for a while now, to see them just get on a good 2-week stretch and hopefully build up some momentum going down the rest of the season and build them some, hopefully, cushion in the wild card.
Yeah, and that, I think, is the focus, whether or not you've got the split screen on, or if you want to call it the secondary focus, or just as I've been talking about on this show and my show on From the Diamond, look, by whatever means necessary, just find your way into the postseason. I think that's the larger goal here. The Braves have been tested in ways that not a lot of other clubs have had to deal with as far as the extent of the injuries, and to compound that and to make it more difficult, the offense has been an enigma all season long. They just have not been able to replicate much of the success that they enjoyed a year ago, and that, I think, has been the strangest part of this whole ride, is not just the guys that you've lost, but some of the ones that you've had in place have just not been able to perform to the level that they need to. Can some of those guys start to do some things down the stretch that could make you forget about what has been a challenging first, over 2/3 of the season, as they have not been able to produce runs, manufacture runs, or do any of the things that you felt like a competent offense should be able to do. Speaking of offense, again, we saw Jorge Soler pinch hit in the 9th, not in the starting lineup, though. Will that change in this series? It didn't sound like it would, but the fact that he is pinch hitting, I know we talked about this yesterday, but I'll bring it up again. It feels like that means he could be back soon. It would be great if he could be in there for the finale, but that, of course, is up to the Braves.
And Blee was running the bases as well on Wednesday, so that's obviously a step in the right direction. You get him running again because, again, as we talked about yesterday, you got to get him out in the outfield. There is no DH spot for him, so he's got to be able to move around in the outfield before you can get him back in there. Sounds like maybe this weekend he could be ready. But yeah, certainly great to come off the bench. And as we said, I mean, that's a big spot, and that's a big weapon that you can deploy off the bench in a clutch situation like we saw do on Wednesday night. Just unfortunately got under it and missed it.
Yeah, and you'd like to see him get, 4 plate appearances per game, obviously, than to be the guy you're calling upon in the 9th inning, especially considering that every plate appearance you can get for a hitter like that, with those kind of at-bats being at a premium, you want to try to maximize that. I guess I can understand now that he's been pinch hitting and jumping into some of these games, why maybe they were hesitant to put him on the IL. That also means that the hamstring issue maybe not as big of a problem, certainly as what they were dealing with Michael Harris, who missed a couple of months. But Soler has run the bases the past couple of days, and hopefully that means that he's going to be all systems go sooner than later. We talked about Gio Urshela, a couple of hits for him, flashed some leather at third base, started some important double plays in this one. He looked pretty good in this game as well, and hopefully he can continue to give the Braves a little bit. As he talked about earlier, it's not just necessarily about what's happening in those top 4 or 5 hitters. The Braves, Jake, need to start getting something resembling production from 6 through 9 in the order. Those bottom 4 spots, if you go look at the splits, and if you're not into bad numbers, I suggest you don't, the bottom of the Braves lineup has really kind of been a black hole this year, starting at the 6th spot all the way down.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, it wasn't the case tonight. You had Kelnick with 2 hits, Orlando with a homer, Laureano a hit, and Urshela 2 hits. But yeah, that would be great if that would continue, because most nights you feel pretty good about your guys at the top of the order. And Michael Harris, who again had an off night, and Ozuna, what he's done. Need to get Olsen going again. But yeah, if those guys can continue to do what they did on Wednesday night and getting on base, setting up the top of the order, certainly would be great. And like I said, especially with those guys at the bottom, I mean, that I feel like is your opportunity. You got some guys with some speed in Kelnick and Laureano down there. Maybe try to do something in a guy in Urshela who can handle the bat, doesn't strike out a lot. Yeah. Maybe try some different things. Try some hit and run. Try to steal some bases here. You just, again, especially with those guys, you're not really waiting on them to hit the 2 or 3 run homer. It's your guys at the top. And maybe that's your opportunity there when those guys get on to try some different things.
Yeah, do something besides the Earl Weaver thing of just waiting for a 3-run homer. That's just not been the way that it's gone for the Braves this year. And who knows if that's going to change. I mean, a few 3-run homers would be nice, but as you mentioned, you can also diversify the things that you're doing and maybe try to spark something, and some speed. That always seems to be something that can help out, because they say, at least I've heard or read somewhere, speed never slumps. But, that's, I guess, subjective as far as it's concerned, because it depends on which speedy player you're talking about. Be that as it may, Atlanta holds a 1.5 game lead on the Mets for the final NL wildcard spot. Mets picking up an exciting win on Wednesday as well. One of the more bonkers celebrations I think I've seen for a walk-off homer. Clearly, they're feeling themselves. They very much feel that they're alive in this wild card race, and they certainly are. So it's going to be fascinating to see down the stretch, how the Braves are playing, what the Braves do with these head-to-head matchups with the Phillies. Will it change anything about the division? And then, of course, you kind of got to look behind you and see, well, what are the Mets doing? How close are they getting? Because they've trimmed it to a 1.5 games now with their victory on Wednesday. Atlanta's going to go with a standout rookie, Spencer Schwellenbach, in the finale. I guess the question, Jake, is can he do it again? Because he has continued to deliver strong start after strong start for the Braves. They could use another one on Thursday.
They could, and he had a good outing against the Phillies early in July, so hopefully he can replicate that. But again, we talked about several times now. I mean, this is the recipe for this Braves team. Get some good starting pitching and hopefully keep the offense in the game long enough that maybe they can find that big home run, or at least string some hits together and put some more runs on the board. But excited to see him again. He's been one of the better surprises for this team this year. So excited to see him get back on the mound, go against this Phillies team that, Braves pitching staff has done a great job of holding down in this series. So hopefully Schwellenbach can continue that.
Well, Schwellenbach is 4-6, a 4.06 ERA. Left-hander Christopher Sanchez will be on the mound for the Phillies. He's 9-8, but with a 3.46 ERA. He's been a big part of the Phillies pitching staff and their starting staff, which has been a pretty solid reason, or a big reason, for the success that they've enjoyed this year. First pitch is set for 7:15 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. It's Game 3 of this 3-game series. The Nationals will come in after the Braves are done with the Phillies. Meanwhile, we are done with this edition of the Braves Postcast. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments. Share the show with a friend and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Braves come up short 3-2 to the Phillies. They will look to take the rubber match behind Spencer Schwellenbach on Thursday, and we'll be back when that one's done to wrap up the series for you. For Jake Mastroianni, I am Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time, and until then, so long, everyone.